welcome to Joe Goes Everywhere, a big blend radio, food, wine, and travel podcast featuring award-winning photographer and travel writer Joe Clark. Let's find out where she's taking us today. Welcome, everyone. Today, Joe Clark. You know, she loves to go everywhere, and she likes to have her glass while she travels. Well, she certainly did that in upstate New York. She went to Corning. She went to the Finger Lakes region. She went wine tasting. She went on airplanes. She went to the famous Corning Museum of Glass. She ate French macarons, or is it macaroons, while doing a wine tasting. That's an interesting pairing. She went to museums, galleries. She had a really good time, and this was all part of the conference put together, an annual conference from the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. So as always, look in the episode notes, the show notes, and you'll see links to her articles, because not only has she done a few articles, she's put together like an entire guide. Joe, have you been writing your own website for this experience? How many days were you there to do this much?
10, I think.
10 days. That's pretty good.
It was a great trip, and 10 days scratched the surface. If somebody listening is planning to go to the Finger Lakes and they think they're going to a bunch of wineries and see everything in the Finger Lakes, let me tell you, you can do one lake. There will be no Finger Lakes. It will be one, because in 1 week, you have no time. There are 144 wineries. And you know me, I'm an overachiever. Look, you can tell I love my wines, but even I did not visit all the wineries in the Finger Lakes, not even the Finger Lake. I couldn't even do Cayuga Lake on both sides, because there's wineries up both sides of the lake.
Wow. So this is an expansive region with a lot of the communities are smaller, right? Like this is part of Steuben County,
Yes.
because we say it's stupendous there. Do you think it's stupendous?
Oh, it definitely is stupendous. And Chemung County is adjacent. Ooh. And yeah, they're stupendous too. It just, there's so much Steuben couldn't hold it all. It spilled over into Chemung.
Well, but it really looks beautiful, and we've had them on the show, so from Explore Steuben, and it's whenever I look at it, I'm like going, wow. Dave has been on the show, and I'm like, waterfalls, you've got outdoor recreation, cycling, some of the best hamburgers, ice cream, wine, breweries,
antique
events,
boats,
antique
champagne,
boats, flying. You went flying.
Gliding, not flying.
Oh, gliding. Okay.
We fly with no engine. There's no engine aboard.
Were you a little scared?
Our hat says no engine, no problem.
That's actually really good when we look at the environment as travelers, doing these different activities. So that's a little bit cleaner for the air, I would think, right?
You have a little prop plane that pulls you out and takes you off up into the wild blue yonder, and you pull a little ball and it releases the tow rope, and the other plane circles back to the airport and lands, and you just keep catching the thermals and working your way around and around. And it was amazing. The view was just astonishing, and I was blown away. I really was.
No fear at all.
Well, no, not really. It gets your stomach sometime, like a roller coaster. And that was the first thing that Chris, my pilot, asked was, do you like roller coaster rides? And I said, no. So he said, okay, I'll keep it level.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, if you were a daredevil and liked the excitement of that drop, he would have done a lot more acrobatic flying, I think. But I was good with what we did, and being able to ooh and ah out both sides of
feel like a bird
nose.
up there.
Yeah, because there's no motor, there's no noise other than, of course, I talked the whole time.
But now, do you wish you could have had a glass of wine while flying or gliding? Excuse me.
Yeah, that would have been nice, but I wouldn't have had a hand for that. I had one hand with my camera and one hand with my GoPro. So, because I was capturing out both windows and out the front and turning the GoPro around backwards, because the pilot is behind you. You're up there and all you see is the nose of the plane and the earth.
Oh, so the pilot's behind you. That's really neat.
Yeah, he's back behind you. So
Oh, wow.
it's just really cool. And
Wow.
all the
Nice.
pilots are volunteers. This is Harris Hill is a club, and so Harris Hill owns the planes, and then the members of the club fly them.
Mm.
And the ground crew were younger kids that are learning to fly and the gliders. But they when you start being towed across the airport, somebody's holding up the sides, the wings, because otherwise it would just tip over and you'd drag it along and
Mm.
dig a gully. So that somebody's running along on the sides holding the wing up. Not that they're that tremendously heavy, but they're balancing it until it gets some momentum, and then off you go. It was
Wow.
fabulous. It really was so much
Oh,
fun.
that's cool, man. Now, how many wineries did you get to? Because I was really fascinated by the one article you have, really talking about these wine pairings with macarons. And I was it as macaroon, so I'm like twirled
Yep.
around. But this was Domaine Le Sort. I can't pronounce anything French, so
Me either. Domaine Le Sort, or Le Sur. Um,
okay.
Domaine Le
Well,
Sur.
excuse us, everybody, for not getting it 100% right, but I
But we
think,
really like your wine
yeah, that's the most important thing.
and your cookies.
I know because Joe, this is interesting because when we talk about wine pairings, it's always cheese and things like that. And apparently they really do a
Except
good
for
job
me.
of pairings. But with you, the macarons, you're like, let's go.
Yeah,
Because
the
you like your
macaron.
Halloween candy
Oh,
too.
yeah. I wrote the article about pairing wine with Halloween candy. And even funnier, I'm headed to Napa next week. So next month we'll be talking about Napa and Sonoma and Hillsburg.
Oh,
But one of the wineries that I'm visiting next week is for a tasting, of course, and the pairing is with Halloween candy. So I can't wait to tell them. I already wrote that article.
she does it. So what was
Been
the
there, done
macarons?
that.
What was the macarons like? Because you had to have a different flavor of macaron per
We
the
did. We
correct
did. We
wine,
had,
right? So
yep.
if they
And
were, yeah, tell us a little bit about that
lemon.
experience.
Yeah,
Of
lemon and plain and chocolate and raspberry.
mm,
And I'm drawing a blank. There's one
oh,
more.
you've got. I've got the list here. Almond. You had almond, pistachio,
Pistachio.
raspberry
That's the one
chocolate.
I left out.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So do you
Yep.
paired unoaked Chardonnay with the lemon?
Oh, and
Ooh, that
that
sounds
was
good.
wonderful. And I love lemon, so that was just ideal. And the unoaked Chardonnay, since I'm not a big fan of heavy oak in my whites, that that just made my day. The unoaked Chardonnay and that lemon cookie, it
Mm.
disappeared fast, let me tell you. The
But the
others I was
reason,
able to take
oh,
a bite and move on to the next one. That one I sucked it right down.
but isn't that what the tastings are about? Is like finding what is the one that really resonates with you, you
Yes,
know?
yes, definitely. And I liked all of them, but that was clearly my favorite. And
Mm.
you can tell it from pictures. You see pictures and it's like each cookie has a bite out, but there's no cookie number one. The yellow cookie's gone.
Oh, so
Before
but
I
it's funny because on our fall podcast with you, our fall party, we had our own little podcast festival for fall season. You were
any
talking
excuse
about
for a party.
lemon beer. You and I we were going off on lemon and
We
sours
were.
and
We
you
were.
know, who knew we were going to talk about so much beer? But did you find beer in the
I
Finger
did.
Lakes region?
We stopped at one brewery and had a tasting there, and that's where I learned that I like malt and not so much the hops. I
See,
learn
this
something
is
every time I go to a tasting. That's the point of tastings. You find not only find things that you like and don't like, but you learn why.
mm,
It was Florida, one of my counties that is suffering now, but that is where I had a wine taste, a beer tasting that they had the bitters units on the
okay.
tasting sheet, and that's when I learned that there's a rating, just like how much alcohol, percentage of alcohol, there's a percentage of bitter taste
Hmm.
that is measured, and Apparently my bitters level is somewhere around 32. If it's much
See,
more than that, it's too bitter and I don't like it, I guess.
yeah, no, 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 no.
And now I
Well,
know I like not only the less bitter, but I like malt, which
and
makes
lemon.
sense. And well, yes, that was a clear winner everywhere, from lemon drop candy as a child right on up to the present.
So let's go to Corning because I think, I remember being upstate New York. We were on our way from Connecticut to Michigan. And, we didn't have much time to stop anywhere. We did do a little bit of Seneca Falls, a little bit of the Erie Canal. And I saw the signs to Corning and I told Dave DeGolia, I'm like, I'm sorry, but our timing was like, there was, but I
You
saw
got to work on
the
your timing.
signs from the high. I know. Well, you want to be everywhere at once. And apparently, that doesn't
Yes.
happen unless our bodies are doing things we just don't know or our consciousness is tripping out somewhere. Okay.
Right.
Let's get woo
Right.
woo, right? Well, you never know. Um, but I just want to go to this glass museum because Corning, if we think about, has been so instrumental in so much, isn't it even going back to the light bulb all the way to now? It's like,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
they were making Edison's light bulbs. Of course, we think of Corning, you think Corningware and Corelware, and you think of that as pretty modern, but when you start looking at their history and then the history of glass in the museum back way before Christ, they were making blowing glass. And there's evidence
wow.
of it. The glass beads that are sewn or made into necklaces, that is the tube, just like we made
Mm-hmm.
pumpkins and apples when we did our class. They're blowing through a tube, and so that glass is here but the middle is hollow. When you make that long tube and then cut it into slices, that makes the beads, and the bead then has a hole through the middle that you can string through.
Mm,
And they have beads from thousands and thousands of years ago. It's
that's
just
amazing.
remarkable.
That's amazing. So going from because there's the art side of it, like there's the beads, but there's the functional, right? We all know Corning glassware from, our kitchens,
Yep, yep,
I,
I've got tons of their stuff.
some people collect it, it's a collector's item too. Um, then there's got to be an art side because it looks like you went to a lot of galleries and museums. And so there, there's like you went to the art of architecture in downtown Corning. Obviously, there's the
Yes,
glass, but the Rockwell Museum Alley Art Project. So you got murals, West End Gallery, Rockwell Museum.
it's
I
amazing.
mean, this is wow.
It's a little art community, and you're so right about the glass too. I made glass two different places, one at Corning and one at Hands on Glass. I made a heart shaped paperweight,
Cool.
and I made a flower with a twisted stem. I should have had those to hold up and show you. I'll send you pictures. Um, but the art and then the function. Glass has so many uses, and
Mm,
storage. That
mm.
there's
And it's
I think,
healthier than plastic.
yeah, and lasts longer if it gets
Hmm.
hot.
Yeah. Well,
Not so
doing
much if
this,
you drop it.
well, no, but if you were making it, right? So they're having these experiences. And I think that's what it changes everything when you get to try something. You
Yeah,
get a better understanding. So did you feel like, wow, I did not know this about glass and walk away the whole
all
different
day.
thing?
I had that feeling all day,
Oh,
and
wow.
and you're watching it in a furnace that's thousands of degrees, and like the one that does the and I talk about that in one of the articles, that at the museum they have demonstrations going on all day, and the glass worker had a torch that he was using hands on with a torch right there in the window as we watched him work, and it was 4,000 degrees.
Wow.
You can't stick your head
You
in
can't
your
even,
oven at 500.
no, you can't even get it. Yeah, you can't even
No.
imagine.
and
You
and
know, we
just that
think about how we
flame.
No, if you don't have AC and it's over 80 degrees, how do we feel? We start feeling a little stuffy.
I'm unhappy
It's
at 74.
well, all I
It
know,
doesn't need
I'm
to
used
be
to the
80.
desert. I'm used to three digits, but it's a little drier depending on the season and everything, or if there's monsoons. So you can kind of handle it, but only for so long. So when you're talking about thousands, like, no, mm-mm.
Hmm. It explains why they have fans pointing at them while they work.
Yeah, I bet. I
but
bet.
but you're so conscious of that heat, and then when you stand behind them and look at them taking the stick, I don't even know what it's called, I'm sure it has a name besides stick, but they take that metal rod and
Hmm.
dip it into melted molten glass inside that furnace and bring it out, and then they're getting ready to hand you the stick, and you've been told, well, be sure you stay behind where our hands are, because our hands are as far forward as it's safe. Anything beyond that, you're going to get burned, so stay behind us. And you're so conscious of,
Mm,
where do I touch? and
yeah.
and then and then you're turning the thing, so this molten ball of glass, if you stop turning, it starts dripping. It's like hot fudge, you get a spoonful of hot fudge and it starts
Ooh.
sort of dripping down, and you're supposed to keep turning to keep spinning it and keep it tight. And if you get too slow, then it starts dripping too far, and it's like you want to go and catch it with your hand, and you're so conscious that no, can't, no, keep that hand
Oh,
away.
yeah, that's because it does look like candy in a way,
It does.
and that's
And it gets
dangerous.
cold. It gets not hot, not completely cold, but it gets cold and hard much quicker than you think too. It's like you've got it out and you're supposed to take these pinchers and pull the petals of your flower out. And by the time, if you're slow like I was trying to be precise and decide exactly where I wanted it. By the time I'd pulled two petals, he had to put it back in and heat it again because it was too hot or too cold. You could tap the glass on the counter and it would clink, and it was too cold to be
Wow.
pliable,
So you
malleable.
understand this art form, then you have a different appreciation for the
Yeah.
artists that do this,
Yeah.
you know?
I've
So
done
yeah,
stained glass and other things to do with glass. So I have an appreciation of all these arts and crafts anyway. But when you see how short a time frame they have to do something, then you look at chandeliers and these beautiful vases and things, and you think, how did they do that?
yeah. And then you go from that to actually drinking and sampling wine in a glass. So that's a whole other
That's
thing.
right.
You have your
And
two
pouring it
double
out of a
appreciation.
glass bottle.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a whole other appreciation again.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. So what with the wines? Is there specific varietals that they're growing and creating out there, or is it a little bit of everything? Because you're talking about Riesling, you got Chardonnay. What were the reds like?
Fantastic. It's the terrain there is very much like parts of France and Germany. When you look at the longitude,
Mm-hmm.
is that longitude
Latitude,
or that's latitude?
latitude.
If you look at the latitude, they're very much in the same range as some of
Okay.
the European countries. So when the people came to this area from European countries, uh, even Russia, uh, they they were quick to say, "Well, I know what I can grow here because this is like where I came from." People would say, "Oh, you can only grow this kind of grape," and these folks were like, "That's not true. I know better." Now
Okay.
they had other issues and had to use American rootstock and do a lot of grafting, so it emerged as a totally different type of wine growing or grape growing. But they've got the gorgeous Rieslings, they've got the Cabernets, they
Wow.
grow. Um, Merlots. I'm trying to think what all we saw. The Gamay. They've got all kinds of things, and they're, as it's warming too, things are changing, and because of the lakes, you've got warm air coming up
Oh
from
yeah.
those lakes. So people in 100 miles away, still in New York, couldn't grow these grapes because they would freeze and be wiped out. And they've got these warming temperatures that are keeping them from freezing. So it gives them kind of I don't know, a false, not desert, but what am I trying to say? Not so much like the rainforest, but
Right.
they've got that they've got that
Humidity.
situation that there
Yeah.
is, the climate isn't the only thing that's affecting their growing.
Mm,
The terrain and the lakes and the lake effects are affecting things
changing.
too,
Huh.
to the better.
Oh, well, there you go. That's cool. That's cool. So now what about the history of the area? Because I heard that you had a visit with Mark Twain,
Well,
Nancy's
yes,
favorite person. Oh boy, she loves
really.
Mark Twain. Oh, yes.
Yeah, who knew that I was going to find Mark Twain, Mississippi boy, in upstate New York? He was on
Huh.
a cruise to the Holy Land and met a guy, became friends with the guy. The guy showed him a picture of his sister, and Twain says it was love at first sight. So
Huh.
he started corresponding with her and finally met her. And on their first date, they went to a reading in New York City. Uh, Wish I remembered what I said that was, because I don't right now. You've got me thinking about wine and macarons. But they dated and fell in love and married, and she turned him down 3 times before she said yes. He
Good
had to win
girl.
over yeah, he had to win over her parents, and but
Wow.
in the meantime he fell in love with the area and was given a home and loaned the money to buy a newspaper in Connecticut, and they summered near
Okay.
Elmira, and we actually visited his study. His sister-in-law was brilliant. His sister-in-law built him this octagonal study about 100 yards apparently from the house, overlooking the Chemung River.
Oh man.
Yeah, he had a great view. I don't know how much writing I would do. I would just sit and look out the window. But he smoked cigars.
Hmm.
So by giving him this beautiful study that he was enamored with, she got the cigars out of her house.
Oh, I see. This was the way of here's your place. Yeah, you can
Yes,
stink it up over
yes,
there, but not in my house.
that's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
she was brilliant.
So these women are with it for sure. They're with it. You also, speaking of history, I know you went to the John W. Jones Museum. There's the
Yes,
Rockwell Museum. So a lot of museums and a historic tour of old Pat II, the Glenn H. Curtis Museum. I mean, so everyone there, like I say, that she really has, Joe has a guide. And so the links are all there. You can also go right to her website. If you want to go to haveglasswilltravel.com, you'll know more about the wine and macarons, right? And then also
right.
go to recipes
And the other articles.
travelculture.com for all these articles and also some input from her fellow writer friends, Kat Anderson, Kathleen Walls, Chris Grant. So very cool. So they all share some secrets that they experienced. And so, yeah, doing these museums, that had to be like a really cool experience just to, because so many, so much history happened there that we may
So
not have
much
been aware
history.
of.
Yeah, so much history and so many things that are such a variety. I mean, when you go to the Curtis Museum, you're seeing antique planes, motorcycles, bicycles, cars, one of the first RVs, a luxury RV. Yeah, it's
Cool.
pretty cool. Um, Huge plane outside, pretty good sized planes inside. So you're walking along and looking at cars and motorcycles, and you're
Boom.
practically being buzzed overhead by these planes that are hanging from the ceiling. So it's very interesting. Um,
Wow,
there were wine museums, of course. So they had
that's cool.
the tools, the winemakers' tools, and There, like I said, that 10 days is not enough.
But you also went to a cemetery that you talked about on our family history show. So that was something important as well. Tell us a little
It
bit about
was.
that.
Well, the Woodlawn National Cemetery is in Elmira. And as I said on the other show, I guess I was just slow. My head was on wine and Finger Lakes and food. My head was on other things. And I was actually
There's a
standing in
song, by the way, from our friend Johnny Mastro and the Mama's Boys called Wine Headed. So I
wine
dedicate that
headed.
to you.
I was,
Yes.
okay, so I was wine headed. Um, I was in the cemetery when it dawned on me that I was in Elmira. And as Southern Girl, and I've written, co-authored several books on the men in Virginia who served in the Confederate States of America in the Army and from our county and adjacent counties. There's a separate book on each county. I was standing there when it dawned on me that Elmira was where the prison camp was, one of the worst. And so I quickly texted my co-author and asked him, who do we have that died in Elmira? Because I'm standing in the midst of this cemetery and have just been told there's nearly 3,000 Confederate graves in that cemetery. He immediately started texting back with names. And so with the link to the cemetery website, you can put in the name and it tells you the grave headstone number, and they're in numeric order. So with that name, I then translated it into a number and was able to take pictures of some of the headstones that will be in the next book, because so many came from our county, over 20 from my county alone. Out of that, there were 30 men shy of 3,000. So
Wow.
2,970 are buried there, all buried by
Wow.
one man who was a former slave from Virginia. He was a remarkable man. He escaped. I say escaped. He left. His plantation owners. The man died, an elderly man, and by his own words, he had been well treated, well cared for his entire life, and he stayed and helped the woman run the plantation. But she was getting on in years and decided that she really didn't have a choice. She needed to sell and perhaps move in with a son for care.
Mm-hmm.
And she told him what was going to be happening, and that would mean the end of his job for sure, but also the end of his home. He would be sold as well and could end up anywhere. So he and two friends left and made their way north on the Underground Railroad and ended up in Elmira. And he found work at a church where he then learned to read and write. So when the war, a few years later, the war breaks out, he is tasked with burying all the Confederate men who died in Elmira. And he kept meticulous records of their name, their rank, their company, everything that he knew about them, everything he could find out. He searched them to see if they had a ring and described it. He put every bit of information he could in the papers, so that only 3 men buried there are unidentified.
Wow.
Which,
Amazing.
out of nearly 3,000 in a prison camp, I think that's remarkable. And he even wrote all this information on paper and put it in a bottle, back to the glass, bottles from Corning probably.
Message in a bottle. Here we go.
Message in a bottle. He sealed it and he tucked it under the man's arm before they put him in the coffin and buried him. So those bottles would be surviving, I'm assuming, glass, that they've got nowhere to go. So even though DNA might not be possible, his records are still safe and sound underground in Elmira.
Wow. Wow. That
So
sounds
it's
like a song. Safe and
and
sound
that's
underground.
the one museum you mentioned, the John Jones Museum, is the farmhouse that he and his wife owned and lived in later years. and the farmhouse has been moved 3 times, but it is now on a corner where it probably will not have to be moved again, and has some of his things
Mm.
inside. So it's a very, very moving to meet the man who cared enough to take that good a care of the soldiers.
That's amazing. Like when you think about that, these stories when you go to places like that, you kind of get attached to them, right? And it takes you
It,
beyond. I mean,
yeah,
travel is about really connecting in with the
in
past, the
so
present, and
many
the future.
ways.
And the
Yeah,
future,
yeah,
it's always looking about where, you like you're talking about the wine, you're getting the history of the wine in the museums, you're going to the wineries, and you're hearing how they're evolving with what's happening with their terrain, right? So
right.
it's the past, present, and future all at one, which is always exciting, to
It
be
is.
in that role. What was the downtown like for Cornwall and those areas to go walking? Looks like there was, history and murals and things like that.
Corning was a beautiful little town to walk in and very walkable, pretty flat. Um, and our hotel, the Radisson, was about a block from the downtown area, so it was a quick walk to get
Oh, cool.
started. Then the main street was pretty flat. Then, of course, the next street up went up a hillside, but they had the architecture was beautiful. I love architecture. And I know I always mark myself as a tourist because wherever I am, I'm like
Yeah, yeah.
walking along, looking up and noticing the gargoyles on the corners of
Yeah,
buildings
but
and
these
the
details, I miss
brickwork.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the inlaid
Hmm.
glass and the
Mm.
clock outside the bank with the kind of Art Deco. There was a time period there that was very Art Deco. So, and with Corning there, I guess glass was easy to come by. So they have lots of mosaics and tile and things like that. So it, those are things that I just love to see and take pictures of. And
Wow.
yeah, it was great.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love that you get that history, the architecture, the people. All right. So the food in general, what was the restaurant scene like?
Uh, Amazing. They had great food. We ate so
Good
many
thing about
places.
walking. Good thing you needed. Yeah. Good thing you had
Walk it
walking.
off,
Hmm.
walk between restaurants. But yeah, the food was very good. That like food anywhere, but I think with some French flares and some German flair to it
So it goes with
because
the
of
wine.
yeah, so it goes with the wine, but it goes with the people. It goes with the
Okay.
heritage, the people that came there and started these areas. It, it's like when you come to South Carolina, you're going to be eating
Mm,
what lots of people just call country cooking. I call it country cooking for the most part, but now it's known as soul food or Gullah food
mm,
because some of it came from Africa, from those enslaved people that came here. So same thing there. You've got the people who came to that area brought their taste and their
mm.
desires with them. So not only to go with the wine, but they that taste of home was something that they put into everything they made.
That's awesome. I love that when you can taste the region and the people's traditions, and their culinary traditions, but also from what I know, this area is also agricultural. So were you getting, fresh from the farm flavors too?
We were several of the restaurants that we went to had their own farms, so almost all
Oh,
of the
no,
food
wow,
was
that's
coming.
wild.
Yeah, it was coming from their
That's wild.
farms.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, we had. Oh, I don't know where she was from. I was going to say one of the wineries. The guy is into the wine and winemaking, and the wife makes noodles
Mm.
or dumplings.
Oh.
Yeah, so she's Asian influence is all
Mm-hmm.
I can say. It could be Thailand, it could be
Mm-hmm.
Korean. I'm not sure. I will have to do some research because I'll be writing about that in the next few weeks. But she always wanted to cook. And of course, she helped and got the winery going, and it got up to the point that they needed help and were hiring people to help with tastings and bottling and that kind of thing. And that I think at that point's when she said, "Okay, you've had
My
your
turn.
fun. Your job's going good. my turn. I want
Yeah.
to cook. And so she started making these dumplings, and they were delicious. The lamb,
Mm,
I had the lamb and I think the lamb and the beef, but they have
mm.
chicken and they have tofu. So they do have the vegan
Oh, that's
or
good.
vegetarian choices. But that they were delicious and went great with the wine.
So did you stay at the one hotel for the same all 10 days, or did you go to other
Food,
ones? What were the other lodgings like?
I stayed in an inn and a bed and breakfast
Awesome.
and three, I guess, three hotels. Um,
Wow. So you got a lay of the land for
yeah,
sure.
I did.
Literally. That's what you laid your head. All these
Yeah,
different places, but that way you could see what it's like. And I'm glad to hear about the bed and breakfast because I think that's something,
yeah. Well, we went to
gets
that was
left
in
out.
Penang,
Okay.
Penang,
Hmm.
and it when I saw that on the sheet, Penang is the town, and we were going to a bed and breakfast there. And I figured Chinese influence sounded kind of Chinesey to me, Penang. And turns out it's for Pennsylvania Yankees that came up there and moved.
Okay. Wow. All right. Hey, who
So
knew?
who knew? Not any of
Yeah.
us, but now
Well,
we
you're
know.
just giving them their own language. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But that's
that's cool.
a woman from, I think she's from New Jersey, the woman who bought that place and opened the bed and breakfast. And
Mm,
it's a beautiful place. And now that town it's a lot more spread out, and it's one direction's pretty walkable, but we walked to the restaurant that night and we took the back way first, which was
mm,
up and down a lot of hills, and it wore us out. I was ready to sit down and ready to eat.
mhm.
But coming back was a much easier trip. So
Well, you've had a glass of wine or two at dinner, so you know you need
yeah,
it to be
less
easy.
pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask about getting there because I know you flew there from South Carolina, right? So where was, for folks coming in from maybe not, New York City or somewhere, where do you fly into?
You fly into Elmira.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there's an Elm air that's the call
I
signs for
I
the
just want
airport.
to, all I can hear in my head is Elvira, the song from the Oak Ridge.
I know we hummed it a lot. Everybody
I
was
did
doing
you?
that.
Okay, so it's not just me, all
It's
right.
not just you. No,
Okay, I can't
Elvira,
help it.
Elmira. But yeah, it was from, you can't get anywhere from Myrtle Beach. You got to go somewhere else first. So, somehow I managed to get from Myrtle Beach to Detroit to change
Okay.
planes. I didn't have to change in Charlotte, which was odd, but I didn't question it. If I only had to change once, that was good. So it was a pretty quick trip going up, changed in Detroit,
Huh,
barely
that's
made the
interesting.
connection, and then went over to Elmira and I was there. Coming back,
Okay.
not so much. Coming back from Elmira, I went to Detroit and changed planes. Then I went to Atlanta, and changed planes, and then came to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
That was that was
Yeah.
a long process.
And it's always fun playing in traffic in Atlanta, right? Every time I've decided 2 to 3 in the morning is the window, but don't
That's
go
when
there
you
when I'm
should
there. I don't want
land.
everybody there. That's when you need to drive around Atlanta because the
Oh,
traffic there is
driving?
the driving in Atlanta now is like Atlanta, and
No,
LA are like,
I
all
don't want to.
friends.
I don't want to drive in any of those places
I
anymore.
do not. Yeah, the city driving, I just, some people are really into it, but I get so used to the back roads, the country roads, and all of a sudden you're in a city and you're like, oh, wait.
I'm not by myself. I'm not
I know,
alone anymore.
it's not all like la di da la
There's
la la.
2,000 other cars out here,
I know, and they
and
want to
they're
go
all
in this speed.
faster than me.
Yeah,
They're
and
like on both sides,
they like to cut you off, not use, their direction signals or anything. And so you have to kind of like, woo, wait.
because they know
So
where they're going.
I
You're
just
the
like
one
to
that's
meander.
lost.
I want to meander everywhere. That's the way I like to drive across the country is just, that's what we do full time. We just meander. It's a
Right,
good time.
right.
It's a good time,
Just
but it sounds
wander
like
along.
You had an excellent time out in
Did.
the upstate New York area. Everyone, again, really go look at this because it's impossible to talk about everything she did in 10 days. And she's not done writing about it. So
Oh no.
that tells you
I'm I'm I've done 3 articles and have not talked about the food or the wine except for the wine and the macarons. Do you need me to
whew.
tell you about the macaron discrepancy?
Yeah, please do. It's like the yam and the sweet potato.
Oh
It's a little
no,
different.
they're
No.
they're a lot more similar than that.
Okay.
A macaroon
Wait, I think I know.
with
Can I
O,
guess?
it has an extra O.
And it has coconut.
It's a big wad of chewy, gooey goodness and coconut. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. And a
Macaron is
macaron,
meringue.
it's more like meringue cookies, not quite, but they're made with almond flour, and you have 2 cookies, and then they put a filling and put the 2 together. So the
Mm.
macaron is the one that you're seeing, especially between now and Christmas, even in Costco in the freezer section, you can buy boxes of macarons,
I can see
and they're
what's
the pretty
happening for
little
you for
different
the holidays.
colors. Oh, I
See
know.
what's happening. See what's happening for you. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
That's awesome.
macarons and wine pairings.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. I think that almond is what makes it work.
I think so too. They're
Yeah.
I love them. When I
Yeah.
see them in a bakery, I'm right there. I'm ready.
Well, when we lived in Mexico, I drank a lot of honey almond tequila.
Ooh,
And
that's
now
interesting.
but I now cannot have tree nuts, and it's almond specifically. And I'm wondering, huh, how much tequila did I drink in Mexico
That it made you allergic to tree nuts forever.
yeah, it's kind of a sad thing. Like pecan pie is my favorite. I almost said pecan. Is it pecan? I
Pecan.
don't.
You don't say trash can. You don't take the trash can to the street.
Pecan.
Pecan.
I was
We
told
say
never to say
pecan.
pecan. In Texas, they say pecan because you don't
Yeah,
want to
but
pee in a can.
no, but you don't take the con to the street.
Well, tomato, tomato,
That's it.
potato,
That's it.
potato. We've got it going. This is fun, everyone. Well, thank you so much, Joe. Have fun
Thank
in
you.
Sonoma, one of our favorite places in the
Oh, I
world.
can't
You're
wait.
going to
It's my
love it.
first time.
Oh, you are going to love it. And it's such the perfect weather right now. And to see those redwoods, I can't wait to hear about you doing yoga in the redwoods.
Ooh, there's a thought. I was just going to be happy doing yoga in the grape, in the vineyard.
The redwoods, yeah, magic, magic.
Well, we
Cheers.
will have to look for that. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us. Keep up with Big Blend Radio's Joe Goes Everywhere podcast on bigblendradio.com. Keep up with Joe's adventures. Go to haveglasswilltravel.com and recipestravelculture.com.